Good morning. I'm Dror Feitelson, and I'll present our work on the effect of information content and length on name recollection. One of the first things we are taught when we learn to program is to use meaningful names. Names should contain all the needed information about what a variable is for or what a function does. But putting a lot of information in the names can make them long and harder to remember. Our research was about this possible trade-off. How much do we pay in recollection ability if we use longer names? In more detail, names are important for understanding. Longer names which contain more relevant information and presented in a more readable form can be expected to promote understandability of code. But working memory is limited, so longer names may be harder to remember. This means that developers will need to check the names of objects they use, which may lead to reduced productivity. So maybe names should have a limited length. Note that names are often constructed from multiple words. Therefore, the information contained in names can be changed in two ways. The first is to add words to the name, so that the name tells us more about the role the named object plays in the program. This also changes the name's length. The second is to use more focused words, which describe the named object's role more precisely. This adds information without changing the name's length. Another possible change in names is to use abbreviations. This is related to the way words are presented and changes the length of the name without changing the information it contains. We do not explicitly consider this in the present study. To study the effect of name length and information content, we executed two experiments with a total of 190 participants. In these experiments, subjects were required to read some code, and later they were asked to recollect names from the code. The experimental treatments differed in the names used in the code. In the first treatment, we used long informative names. In the second, we used more general names of similar length. These were the hardest names to create, as they needed to be relevant but not too revealing. In one experiment, we also had a third treatment with short names. We performed two independent experiments, which were designed and conducted by two separate groups of students. The experiment designs had many differences. For example, in the programming language used, the named objects, the name recollection test, and the metric used to judge how close the recollected names were to the original names. This serves to reduce threats to validity. For example, one could be concerned whether naming style has an effect on name recollection. But we used both common naming styles, underscores and camel case, one in each experiment. So if the results are similar in the two experiments, we can say that naming style probably does not have an effect. In experiment 1, the subjects first received an explanation, gave their consent, and answered demographic questions. They were then asked to read 5 functions. This was followed by a short text about penguins as a distraction. Then they were asked to recall the functions based on their descriptions. In experiment 2, there was no distracting text. 3 functions were presented, each followed by 2 comprehension questions and 2 naming questions. The results of the experiments will be shown in graphs which compare the treatments. These graphs show cumulative distribution functions. The horizontal axis represents the degree of similarity measured between the original name and the recalled name. The plot then shows what fraction of responses had a certain similarity or less. The plot that is below another plot, like the blue line here, indicates a shift to the right, meaning higher similarity scores. If the plots cross each other, this means that the distributions overlap, and neither treatment has consistently higher similarity. The first results compare the long informative names, those with focused words in blue, with the less informative ones using general words in red. In experiment 1, informative names led to better recollection in 4 of 5 function names. In 3 of them, the difference was statistically significant based on the Mann-Whitney test. In experiment 2, the informative names led to better recollection for the variables in 2 of 3 functions. In the third function, the general names led to slightly better recollection. You might have noticed that some of the distributions of results have large steps. These are modes in the distribution of results, where many subjects made exactly the same mistake. In some cases, this was to recollect the words in the name in the wrong order. For example, instead of words counter, many subjects remembered count words. To see the effect of this type of mistakes, we manually reordered the words in all of the names to reflect the correct order. As a result, the similarity scores were improved. However, the qualitative results concerning which treatment was better did not change. Very interesting results were found when we studied the effect of demographic variables. The top graph here shows the difference between recollecting informative and general names for experienced subjects who had 5 or more years of programming experience. The bottom graph shows the same data for inexperienced subjects with up to 4 years of experience. The less experienced subjects got higher scores. But we also observed a strong interaction between the names and the experience level. The experienced subjects were only slightly worse than the inexperienced ones at recollecting informative names, but they were very bad at recollecting the more general names. Similar results were observed when we studied the effect of gender. Females remembered names better than males, and the difference was bigger for the names using general words. The difference between males and females was smaller than the difference between experienced and inexperienced subjects. Experiment 2 also included a treatment with short, single-word names. These names contain less information than the multi-word names in the other treatments, but they were most often recalled perfectly, as indicated by the large fraction of results with a similarity score of 1. To summarize, we make 2 types of contributions in this paper. In terms of methodology, we suggest a distinction between the effect of name lengths and their information content, by using focused as opposed to more general words. We also note that when names are compared, word order errors should be given special consideration. In terms of recollecting names, we show that names with more focused information are easier to remember than more general names of similar length. However, really short names are much easier to remember. And interestingly, females and inexperienced subjects were better at remembering names, and males and experienced subjects were especially bad at remembering the more general names.